This bank was established in 1609 under what Smith called the guarantee of the city, under the supervision and direction of 4 burgomasters, who were trustworthy, respectable individuals from the city, and each directing burgomaster, all 4 of them, are changed each year. Each new set of burgomasters counts the gold in the bank, compares it with the books the bank is keeping, and delivers the bank's books and reserve of gold and silver to the new set of burgomasters, who receive the same upon oath. Smith said, in that sober and religious country, oaths are not yet disregarded. Smith also said, amidst all the revolutions which faction has ever occasioned in the government of Amsterdam, the prevailing party has at no time accused their predecessors of infidelity in the administration of the bank. No accusation could have affected more deeply the reputation and fortune of the disgraced party, and if such an accusation could have been supported, we may be assured that it would have been brought. End quotation. When money in either coin or bullion was deposited with the bank would give credit in its books, typically 5% below the market price of bullion. This 5% was called the agio. What does this mean? Recall from our previous discussion about apples being directly bartered for money, that if the price of apples doubles but the price of money remains the same, then twice as much money can be had for the same amount of apples, which is the same thing as saying that half as many apples will exchange by the same amount of money than before. The credit the bank gives in its books is known as the bank price of bullion. It is typically 5% below the market price of bullion. This is known as the agio. If, however, the money deposited toward the bank was in the form of clipped and worn coin, which is diminished currency, from the neighbouring states, then, in the example of the Bank of Hamburg, not Amsterdam, the supposed difference between the old clipped, worn coins, quote, poured into it from all the neighbouring states, end quote, and the new, freshly minted currency of the state of Hamburg was 14%. That is, the worth or the cost of the newly minted coin was 14% above the worth of the old, worn, clipped, and debased coin from other nations. That is to say, the price of the new, freshly minted coin of Hamburg, the state of Hamburg, to which the city of Hamburg belonged, was 14% higher than that of the price of the old, debased, worn, clipped coin which was flooding into the city of Hamburg from the surrounding states. What was of value was the estimated amount of gold and silver contained therein. Here, Smith makes no mention of the Bank of Hamburg issuing bank money as credits upon anybody's account, so I presume that this service was not offered by the Bank of Hamburg. To illustrate this diagrammatically further, let us say that £50 worth of clipped coin would exchange for 100 bushels of wheat. Then we would say that the price of the clipped coin was lower than that of the freshly minted coin because only £43 of the freshly minted coin would exchange for 100 bushels of wheat. Thus, that which has a higher price, i.e. the freshly minted coin, would be of a lesser amount when the bushels of wheat were fixed in amount. That which had a lower price, such as the clipped coin, would exchange in a greater amount for 100 bushels of wheat. Here I have used a difference between the price in money of the clipped coin and the price in money of the freshly minted coin as 14%. Recall that the words as price, worth, and cost can be used interchangeably within the 18th century. I now must tell you of a profitable ruse which Smith warns us operated in England. The seigniorage is the price paid for the cost of minting any form of gold into golden sovereigns. Initially, the old coin, or bullion, which may have been of doubtful purity and authenticity, or gold plate, cups, trophies, jewelry, etc., was melted. This allowed the separation of the gold from the other metals it was mixed with. Then the Royal Mint would mix the gold with the other metals in the correct proportions for the composition of a gold sovereign, which would be formed. The cost of this work, the seigniorage, was paid for by the English crown, i.e. the revenues received by the state by taxation such as malt duties and taxes imposed upon the importation of goods, etc. The idea was to distribute and freely intermingle these new coins with the older ones. But there was no realistic way to collect and filter out all the older ones. In fact, there was a profitable reason why the newer ones were filtered out and removed from circulation, and this reason was that if Mr. Joe Bloggs could get in his hand a large number of these new, freshly minted coins, he could melt them down into bullion and then take that bullion to the Royal Mint to be reminted into new, freshly minted coin. This happened because the Royal Mint bought at the price of the old, worn, clipped coin, which was priced at, say, 9% lower than the new, freshly minted coin from the Royal Mint. So long as the market price of gold bullion was less than the mint price of the new coin, the person committing this ruse would be buying low and selling high, thus making a profit. To explain this further, let the weight of pure gold be 1 ounce in weight within freshly minted coin from the mint and say this gold has been stamped with a denomination of £46.72.5. Mr. Joe Bloggs can now melt this down into, say, bullion, which is worth £48, and sell this to the mint for £48, which is the price at which the mint buys bullion in order to create the denominated value of £46.72.5 of freshly minted coin. That 1 ounce in weight of gold has the worth of, say, 1,000 bushels of wheat, he would be selling it for the worth of, say, 1,026 bushels of wheat, and pocketing the difference. That is to say, he receives his 1 ounce in pure gold in the form of a denomination of £46.72, but after he has melted this into plate, jewellery, or bullion, he can sell it for £48. The Royal Mint will issue £46.72.5 of denominated value for every £50 of old clipped and worn denominated value it receives. This is what the Royal Mint is attempting to do. The Royal Mint also buys in bullion, plate, and jewellery and melts that down. Mr. Joe Bloggs would, in effect, be buying a certain amount of gold at a lower price and selling it at a higher price. The denominated worth of the received newly freshly minted coin would be lower than the worth of the gold bullion which was brought to the mint, and by melting down the new freshly minted coin into bullion, a profit could be realistically made. You should know that £46 colon 14 colon 6 signifies the stamped denomination as £46, 14 shillings and 6 pence, where 20 shillings equal £1 and 12d, 12 pence, equal 1 shilling. £46, 14 shillings and 6 pence of new freshly minted coin would contain the same amount of silver as £50 of old clipped worn coin, the difference being approximately 8% in this case. At the same time, the market price of silver bullion would vary between £47 14 shillings and £48. So the trickster would be buying an amount of silver at a low price, £46 14 shillings and 6 pence, and selling it for a higher price between £47 14 shillings and £48, thus making a profit. I quote from Book 4, Chapter 6, entitled Of Treaties of Commerce. The operations of the mint were upon this account, somewhat like the web of Penelope. The work that was done in the day was undone in the night. The mint was employed not so much in making daily additions to the coin as in replacing the very best part of it, which was daily melted down. End quote. Even if the seigniorage was paid by the private individual who brought the gold to the mint to be coined, as happened in France, this ruse might still be possible if the mint price of the fresh coin would be higher than the market price of bullion, sufficiently so to take into account the seigniorage. Imagine the difference between £46 14 shillings 6pence and £48 being the cost of the seigniorage. Thus, if the new freshly minted coin becomes melted into ingots and returned to the French mint, this would no longer be profitable for our trickster to do so. Smith again. A seigniorage will, in many cases, take away altogether, and it will in all cases diminish the profit of melting down the new coin. End quote. But if the seigniorage was too great, there lay an alternative peril, which was that of counterfeit money, i.e., a fraudster money counterfeiter would construct a coin which looked like a gold sovereign and would pass for one in circulation, but which contained far less gold than a genuine one from the royal mint. It is possible, and likely in my view, though Smith does not mention this, that when fresh, newly minted Dutch coin was minted from old devalued clipped worn coin from all states, all places, all nations, that the bank had exclusive access towards obtaining this, quote, good and true money, end quote. I say this because of the following quotation from Wealth of Nations, Book 4, Chapter 3, Part 1. Digression. As a shilling fresh from the mint will buy no more goods in the market than one of our common worn shillings, so the good and true money which might be brought from the coffers of the bank into those of a private person, being mixed and confounded with the common currency of the country, would be of no more value than that currency from which it could no longer be readily distinguished. While it remained in the coffers of the bank, its superiority was known and ascertained. When it had come into those of a private person, its superiority could not well be ascertained without more trouble than perhaps the difference was worth. By being brought from the coffers of the bank, besides, it lost all the other advantages of bank money, its security, its ease and safe transferability, its use in paying foreign bills of exchange. End quote. In the following quotation from the same section, when Smith refers to this bank, he is referring to the Bank of Amsterdam, established in 1609, not the Bank of Hamburg. Start quote. This bank received both foreign coin and the light worn coin of the country at its real intrinsic value in the good standard money of the country. deducting only so much as was necessary for defraying the expense of coinage and the other necessary expense of management. End quote. When Smith says the words as real intrinsic value, he infers that which the amount of gold contained therein will exchange for. So this is our concept as cost and also our concept as worth from the 18th century. I'm sorry to have used the word value without defining it yet, but I will do in due course. Treat this as a spoiler. When Smith says, quote, good standard money of the country, end quote, he is referring to the fresh, quote, good, end quote, coin, which is minted from this gold by the Dutch mint and is of a weight and purity guaranteed by the state which Amsterdam is part of. The word as defray means to pay or to cover the costs of. Smith continues, for the value which remained after this small deduction was made, it gave a credit in its books. This credit was called bank money, which, as it represented money exactly according to the standard of the mint, was always of the same real value and intrinsically worth more than current money. The bank was not intended to be an institution which makes too much profit. It charges for its administration costs and the cost of storing the gold which is brought to it. We are told that the quote, worth, end quote, of bank money was quote, intrinsically worth more than current money, end quote, i.e., worth more than the quote, light and worn coin of the country, end quote. In the same section, I quote, it was at the same time enacted that all bills drawn upon or negotiated at Amsterdam of the value of 600 guilders and upwards should be paid in bank money, which at once took away all uncertainty in the value of those bills. Every merchant, in consequence of this regulation, was obliged to keep an account with the bank in order to pay his foreign bills of exchange, which necessarily occasioned a certain demand for bank money.